everyone. Welcome to our live session today. My name is No Afika. I am audiologist from 20dB Hearing and I'm your host for today. Today we would like to talk about the interesting topic of hearing loss and balance. As many of us may know, our ability to hear and maintain balance are crucial aspects of our daily life. Any disruption in this function can have a significant impact on our overall well-being. So please sit back, relax, and join us in this sharing session about the topic of hearing loss and balance. Before we begin our live session today, it is my pleasure to introduce to all of you our speakers for today. We are very happy to have with us two highly qualified and experienced audiologists from Malaysia and Singapore. So our first speaker for today is Miss Nabila. Miss Nabila, you may wave your hand to our audience.
Hi.
She is a senior audiologist with over 5 years of experience in this field. She is currently based at CTDI branch of 20dB Hearing Malaysia and has helped numerous patients with hearing problems. So our next speaker is Miss Kausilia.
Hi, everyone.
She is an audiologist at 20dB DigiSound Singapore. With almost 3 years of experience in audiology, Ms. Kausilia also has a wealth of knowledge and experience in conducting vestibular assessments such as VHIT, CVAM, OVAM, and BPPV exercise for patients. So without further ado, let us proceed with our first speaker today, Ms. Nabila, to share with all of you about what is hearing loss.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So thank you, Afika. All right. Hi and Assalamualaikum to all of you. So my name is Nurul Nabila binti Ismail and I am the audiologist at 20dB Hearing, Taman Tun. So today I would like to share to all of you about a hearing loss. So actually, a hearing loss is when the ability for you to hear is reduced and not able to hear well as someone with normal hearing. So hearing loss, according to Deafness and Statistics, more than 1.5 billion people worldwide are currently affected by hearing loss in at least one of the year. And hearing loss also is the second most prevalent cause of living with a disability after depression. And according to WHO 2022, an estimated 700 million people worldwide will be affected by disabling of hearing loss by 2050. So this is the anatomy of the ear. Actually, we have three parts of ear consist of our outer ear, middle ear, and also our inner ear. Outer ear consists with our pinna. This is pinna structure and our ear canal, or we call it as external acoustic meatus. And then next we have middle ear, which is the area behind the tympanic membrane. This is the tympanic membrane. This is the three bones, which are the three smallest bone in our body. We call them ossicles, or also known as malleus, incus, and stapes. And next we have the inner ear structures, consists of semicircular canals, our cochlea, and our nerve. And also this structure of this part also is the hearing and balance apparatus. Next, we have types of hearing loss. Usually there are three common types of hearing loss, which are the conductive hearing loss, and we have sensory neural hearing loss, and we have mixed hearing loss. For your information, conductive hearing loss is usually a temporary hearing loss whereby sound cannot go in due to some obstructions that cause the sound cannot go into the inner ear. And then usually the management for conductive hearing loss could be ongoing monitoring, or maybe you need some hearing aid amplification. And also bone anchored, or you may maybe you need bone anchored or bone conduction amplification devices. Other than that, for the sensory neural hearing loss, usually we call it as a permanent hearing loss. So these sensory neural loss usually due to the inner part of the ear. And for the mixed hearing loss, usually is the combination between conductive and also sensory neural hearing loss. Next, we have degree of hearing loss. So whenever you go check your ears, right, with your audiologist, so they will provide you this kind of audiogram. So from here, you will know the level of your hearing loss. So there's a few stages of hearing loss over here, starting from normal hearing loss. Normal hearing loss is when the response is between 20 decibel and lower than that. 20 up to the 0 decibel, and then usually there's no perceive of hearing loss symptoms. But when the response start in between of 25 decibel to 45 decibel, it indicates of mild hearing loss. And then from 50 to 65, it indicates moderate hearing loss. And then from 70 to 90, it indicates severe hearing loss. And if the response is low, in between 95 and below, which is up to 120 decibel, it is indicate profound hearing loss. So for your information, if the response is lies between 25 to 45, which indicate the mild hearing loss, usually the problem is difficulties in hearing and understanding quiet or soft conversation, especially at noisy situation. Example like restaurant or classroom. And then for moderate hearing loss in between 50 decibel to 65 decibel, this patient or this client could have difficulties in understanding speech, or maybe they need to higher up the volume of TV or a radio. Let's say the response is between 70 to 90. It is considered severe hearing loss. So for these cases, usually speech has to be louder than normal. You maybe need to shout, or maybe you need to raise your voice higher than normal. And for these cases, usually they had to follow a group conversation and always need repetitions. And if the response is 95 up to 120 decibel, usually it's very hard for this patient to follow up a conversation, and they usually respond to only loud sound. Next, this is a common causes of a hearing loss. So we have a common causes for conductive hearing loss, which are otitis media, or we known as ear infections. We have blockage ear canal due to earwax, excessive earwax, or maybe a foreign body, example like insects that stuck into your ear. Could be eardrum perforation, which are the hole at your tympanic membrane, and also atresia and macrotia, which is a congenital deformity affecting the ear structures. The common causes of hearing loss due to sensory neural hearing loss, first is noise exposure, exposed to excessive loud sound, example at your working place, or intense usage of earphones. Then we have presbycusis, hearing loss due to aging. Ototoxicity, hearing loss due to medicine. Certain medicine can cause a hearing loss, example like gentamicin or any chemotherapy drugs like cisplatin. And then we have acoustic neuroma, usually known as vestibular schwannoma, which a tumor that grows in the inner ear that can affect hearing and balance. And the common causes of hearing loss for mixed hearing loss usually is a head trauma or combination of conductive and sensory neural hearing loss. Next, this is a symptoms of hearing loss. For adult, usually sometimes they might complain trouble listening at noisy places, or sometimes they need to turn on volume louder than other people, and they're often missing phone or ringing or doorbell. And then listening fatigue, which is very tired after attending a social event, or some people they avoid of social situations. Symptom hearing loss for children. Number one could be slow development of speech than their peers. They don't startle to any loud sound, request to increase volume TV louder, sometimes their speech is unclear than their peers, and they might struggling at school, especially they have poor academic performance and could be cannot focus in the classroom. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nabila, for the valuable input about hearing loss. I believe now all of you might have a clear idea about what hearing loss is. So from what have been presented by Ms. Nabila just now, we can see there are several types, degree, causes, and symptoms of hearing loss. So hearing loss is a prevalent issue that can have a significant impact on our quality of life and affect our ability to communicate and participate in daily activities. Okay, so next, let us proceed with our second speaker for today, Ms. Kausalya, to share with our audience about how hearing loss is related to balance.
Hello, so hi again. So I'll just present my slide now. So thanks to Miss Afika just now for the introduction and Miss Nabila on sharing just now about hearing. It was so wonderful. So we just learned about what is hearing, right? What is hearing loss, and the symptoms of hearing loss. Now we want to know how the hearing loss is related to balance or balance disorders. We know both the hearing and balance are both two sensory systems, right? So we want to learn how both the systems are related to each other. So basically, moving on to the next slide. So yeah, hearing system, or what we call as auditory system, is a system that sends sounds, right? So it's very straightforward. As for balance, or what we call as vestibular system, is something is important for us to sense our balance, to maintain our balance, to orient ourselves in space. Just like hearing helps us to localize the sound, locate the sound, to basically help us to be able to communicate, right? So just like hearing, balance is also a sense that helps us to maintain our balance in space or orient ourselves in space. So looking at this diagram here that is attached here, right? Just like how Miss Nabila have just explained, right? Our ears have three parts, just from the outer part, from the outer ear, and then we go to the canal and up to the drum. We call it outer ear, and then outer ear. After the outer ear, we have the middle ear, where we have the smallest bones. So that's the part we call as middle ear. After that is the part that we are actually focusing today, is the inner part of our ear, or the inner ear, which is shaded in green color here. So when we focus to the green color part, right? So when we zoom into the green color part, we actually have cochlea here, the one that looks like a coiled structure, right? It's cochlea, we call it, and that's the sensory organ for hearing. Because we know hearing system is a sensory system. So for the system, we need an organ. So we have cochlea as a sensory organ for hearing, just like how Ms. Nabila have just explained. So for balance, it's a system also, right? So we do need a sensory organ to actually sense our balance, right? So when we look at here, so the sensory organs for balance is what we call as semicircular canals and vestibule. So we have two organs in the inner ear, which we call as semicircular canals and vestibule. So when we look at here, right, the cochlea, the sensory organ for hearing, and vestibule, semicircular canals, the sensory organs for balance are actually, they looks more like a one single organ. They are in the same space. they are in the inner ear part. So they share the same space, common space. So they are located at the same area, right? So if there is any issue in one organ or in one sensory part, of course there might be the other part or other sensory organ might be affected as well. So by saying that they are already in the same area, we also must mention that there's this fluid. This inner ear actually is filled with fluids that is flowing through the semicircular canals to the cochlea. So we have fluid that is actually filled the whole inner ear part from the semicircular canal to the cochlea. So they share fluids, they share the same space. So moving to the next slide. Okay, so we just further look into the organs and how they actually function differently to actually maintain our posture, to maintain our balance in space, right? So just like how we said just now, we have semicircular canals. Okay, we do have 3 organs just below at the semicircular canal. Sorry for that. Okay, just at the bottom of each semicircular canals, we have 3 organs that will help us to sense the rotation of our head. Okay, later we will see how it helps. So we have 3 organs at the bottom of each semicircular canal, and then 2 more organs at the vestibule area. So we have semicircular canals and vestibule, 3 organs at semicircular canal, and 2 organs at vestibule. So those 2 organs at vestibule will actually help us to sense static head position and linear motion of the head. So later we will see what is static head position and linear motions, right? And of course, cochlea at the top, at the bottom part will help to sense the hearing. So to further break down this, when we look at the semicircular canals, right, like I said, we have 3 organs at the semicircular canal. I've actually shaded here as orange color. Okay, this part here, the orange color, are the 3 organs that will help us to maintain or to send information to our brain about our head position, especially as rotations. So when we move our ears, our head this way, or this way, or this way, these are the sensory organ will help to sense the information and send the information to our brain. So another 2 more organs are located at vestibules, right? So we shaded it as blue color here. Okay, so this organ will sense linear motion or static head motion, or also acceleration of our head. So for example, when you tilt your head towards the left side, right? Like remember we have mentioned that there is fluid around this area, right? So when you tilt your head to one side, this fluid will move to the opposite direction. So when you tilt your head to the left side, the fluid is actually moving to the right side. So this motion of the fluid will actually stimulate the nerve and will cause the nerve to fire information to our brain on our position, our head position, or on our body position. Okay, so moving on. So just like we have explained, we have 5 organs that is important for balance on each side. So 3 in the semicircular canal, 2 in the vestibule. So this side we have 5 sensory organs for balance for each head position and body position, and the other side we have another 5 sensory organs as well. So what will happen when you move or when you tilt your head, when you move your head in rotation position, these 5 sensory organs will actually integrate with each other. That means they communicate with each other, and then they send information to our brain about our body position or our head position. So this is where it's located, the inner ear part, right? Okay, so moving to the next slide. So now we know that there is this balance system that is actually help us to orient ourselves in space. And we have this hearing system that help us to sense hearing. And how does it interconnected? How does it work together? So it's very obvious if we follow through our presentation just now, it's very obvious that they're actually in a common space, they are in the same space. They also share the fluid from the semicircular canal to the cochlea. So if there is any issue in one organ, the other organ might be affected as well. So why we say this? So here is a diagram attached, right? A picture attached here. When you look at this picture, there is this cochlea, the snail-like structure, the sensory structure for hearing, and then we have the semicircular canals and vestibule at the top area here. So both of this sensory organ is actually innervated by the same nerve, which we call as vestibular cochlear nerve. So these nerve will carry information from both the sensory organs, from the hearing sensory, from the balance sensory. These nerve will bring the information to our brain. So if there is a pathology on the nerve, like how Ms. Nabila have explained about the tumors, right? If we have a tumor in the auditory nerve, it's going to affect both the sensory functions. Okay. And moving on, this is the diagram here is actually showing the development of our hair. So the development of the hair when during a 4th week of pregnancy, the hair will look like this. That means this is where the hair is actually growing from. This is what we call as common cavity. So the hair will actually grow from the common cavity, and on the 8th week, the hair will look like this, where we already have developed the cochlea, developed the balanced sensory organs. So they will develop together from the same origin, which we call as common cavity. So when they come from same origin, if there is a single gene mutation, so the mutation gonna affect both the sensory part, right? So the last thing before we sum up everything, we would just like to emphasize on those similar things can cause hearing and vestibular or balance disorders. Okay, just like how we have just explained, inherited mutations like gene mutations can affect both the balance and hearing sensory. So next is ototoxic drugs. Yes, just like Ms. Nabila explained, we have antibiotics which can be very ototoxins, which can affect the sensory cells, or what we call as the hair cells of each the sensory organ. So both cochlea and the semicircular canals have their sensory cells which could be affected by ototoxic drugs like gentamicin and streptomycins. And we still do have a lot of unknown ototoxins, which we might need to explore more. And we all agree that prolonged exposure to loud or intense noise can actually cause hearing loss. But there are emerging studies stating that during the sound. And then microbial infections such as CMV and meningitis also can affect both your hearing and your balance sensory nerves. And then aging is something we all agree. The fact that aging affects your hearing, it's something that we all agree to. So same thing, it can cause the balance disorientation as well for elderly peoples. So hearing loss that is caused by aging is called as presbycusis, and balance loss caused by we would just say that auditory and the balance sensory systems have different function, but they share important features and they often fail together. So the thing is, we understand that both the hearing system and the balance system are related to each other. So if one system is failed, the another system might fail as well. But the good thing is, if we were able to find a solution for this problem, it's likely might have a good impact on the other system as well. So yeah, so that's all from me on this topic. Passing back to Ms. Afika.
Thank you, Ms. Kausalya, for your insightful input regarding the relationship between the hearing loss and balance. Your explanation has provided us with a deeper understanding of the sensory organ responsible for hearing and balance, as well as the various factors that can cause damage to these systems and many more. So now we have finished the discussion session with our audiology. So let us move on to addressing some of the common questions that are frequently asked about hearing loss and balance. So we start to giving the question to our first speaker first, Miss Nabila. Okay. So as mentioned by Ms. Nabila before, over 1.5 billion people worldwide are affected by hearing loss in at least 1 year. Okay, so this is a concerning issue as the numbering continues to increase each year. So as an audiologist, could you please share with us whether it's possible to prevent hearing loss? And additionally, what effective prevention strategies would you suggest helping reduce the impact of hearing loss?
Okay, actually, hearing loss can be prevented. So there's a few two things that I can share today, which is number one, probably don't use a cotton bud to clean your ears. All right, because of why using a cotton bud can damage your eardrum and can cause the earwax to go deeper into the ear. So when the earwax go deeper into the ear, then the earwax can get stuck and you might have a hearing loss. Okay. Number two is using an ear protection, especially example like earplugs or maybe an ear muffs when you expose to loud sound or loud noise, especially when you at your workplace, right? You're exposed to a very loud sound. You need to protect your ear, otherwise, eventually you might have a hearing loss. And please get your ear checked. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nabila. So remember everyone, first, don't use the cotton bud. Second, use hearing protection. And third, need to do an annual hearing check. Okay. Okay, by the way, Ms. Nabila, how about if someone is experiencing hearing loss? What steps should they take to address it and improve their hearing ability?
So let's say, based off my explanation just now, if you have a symptom of hearing loss, right? If you think that you suspect of hearing loss, I think better you get your ear checked. You can go to the hearing center or hospital that provide the ear checkup, and then don't wait until your hearing getting worsened. If you think you have suspect or you notice of the symptom of the hearing loss, don't waste your time. Just go to check your ears. Also, no harm for you to check your ears, and then get your ear checked at least annually checkup. Uh, yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nabila, for answering the questions. So now let's proceed with question to Ms. Kausilya. Okay, Ms. Kausilya, aside from medical treatment, is there any lifestyle modification or habits that individuals can adopt to help prevent balance disorder from occurring or progressing?
Okay, for balance disorders, right, because they might have different symptoms. So, especially for spinning sensations or symptoms as those, one can actually modify their diet. They might need to reduce the intake of salt, and hydration is key. They might need to hydrate themselves, and yeah, they need to take a balanced diet, lah, I would say. Yes. And also some says that physical exercises such as yoga, tai chi might help to suppress the symptoms as well. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Kausilya, for highlighting it. So by making simple changes such as balanced diet and also physical exercise, we can take active steps towards promoting good balance and avoiding the potential negative effects of balance disorder. Okay, by the way, Ms. Kausilya, how about the physical therapy? Can physical therapy be used to treat balance disorder, and to what extent can physical therapy effectively treat it?
Okay, if you ask me if physical therapies or physical exercise help to treat the balance disorder, I believe it may not treat the balance disorder completely, because when we say balance disorder, it's like very, very broad. There are many types of balance disorders, right? But if we say it may treat the symptoms or suppress the symptom, it may be true. So like I said, the spinning sensation, dizziness or vertigo, right? So those symptoms can be suppressed by physical exercises. Yeah. So it may not treat the balance disorder completely, and it's merely depend on what type of balance disorder it is. Mm.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for both of you for the great answer. Hopefully, it can give a deeper and better understanding to the audience. So now we are at the corner of the end. So before we end our live session for today, is there any advice from Miss Nabila or Miss Kausilia to our audience for today?
Okay, for my side, maybe you may come to our center to get your ear checked. You can go to the nearest center at your house. So, as we, as an audiologist, will help you to do the necessary hearing test and provide management according your problem.
Yeah, I totally agree to that. We need to, always need to check our hearing first if we have any, suspect that we have hearing loss or what, right? So balance is equally as important as hearing. We also need to be more careful about our balance system, and may need to take some prevention methods to avoid any issues in future as well. So yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for both of our speakers. So we hope that this discussion has been informative and has inspired you to take action in your community to raise awareness of hearing loss and support those who are impacted by this condition. Please feel free to reach out or contact us if you have any questions or concerns. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you for
Thank you.
joining. Bye bye.